With the long offseason almost wrapped up, San Francisco fans are eagerly awaiting training camp, which will start in just a couple days. But I want to reflect a little bit on training camp last year and going into this upcoming year. Last year, we had a player that many of us frankly didn't know a whole lot about, and his name was Brock Purdy. To say Purdy wasn't viewed in the best light would be an understatement. He was actually viewed worse than Nate Sudfeld, who the Niners gave a contract to that offseason in hopes that he would be the backup to Trey Lance. This ultimately didn't come to fruition with Jimmy Garoppolo returning to the Niners. Nonetheless, the Niners did have to keep a roster spot open for Brock Purdy, as they were nervous another team would poach him off the practice squad. After injuries to both Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy was inserted into the starting lineup, and well, he never looked back. He looked like the best quarterback Kyle Shanahan has ever had with his time on the Niners. He was routinely putting up 30 points a game, but for many, this isn't enough. And now, this offseason, there's been a new wave of speculation stating that Purdy frankly won't be able to continue to get it done in the NFL, since there's been teams that now have the whole entire offseason and more film to diagnose exactly what to do with a physically limited quarterback. Despite there being many, and I mean many, examples of physically limited quarterbacks being extremely successful in the NFL, this criticism seems to continue to go on and on about Brock Purdy. Even Hall of Fame quarterback Steve Young has felt the need to come out and speak about Brock Purdy's physical limitations and his potential success in the NFL. Speaking to Matt Maiocco, this is what Young had to say about Brock Purdy. "We have this incredible, unique human being named Brock Purdy, and I'm not going to limit him. I'm not going to say, oh, he's not bigger, he's not as strong, he's not as fast. I'm just not going to limit him. I think he's an incredibly unique human made for quarterbacking, and let him cook. I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to prejudge anything and say he can't or can't do it. I think it's all possible with Brock." So here, one of the most gifted quarterbacks and a Hall of Fame quarterback at that is speaking about Brock Purdy and his limitations. And here, he doesn't see Brock Purdy being limited in the same way as many people view him. Young attributes his faith in Brock Purdy despite his physical limitations for what he calls the Force. This is what he had to say. "There's a processing. I call it the Force. It's like a Star Wars analogy. It's something you can't describe. It's just someone has the Force, and I think quarterbacking is so much that way. When I see someone who has the Force, I don't know how to tell you all the intricacies of what makes that, but you can just tell. Brock had it so thick. It's like Luke Skywalker. Right away, he wasn't the biggest guy, he's not the fastest guy, he's not the strongest arm, but he's got the Force. Maybe as strong as anyone who's playing." When I hear of the Force, I think of guys like Joe Montana, Tom Brady, guys who are bigger than themselves. Despite having physical limitations, both of these players went on to be considered some of the best quarterbacks ever. Joe Montana's Force was called his coolness, and I see so much of that same coolness that Joe had in Brock. And while I'm not saying Brock is the Hall of Fame quarterback and the best quarterback of all time like Joe is, I do want to point out they both are very similar in that Joe also had what was called a weak arm. But on the film, you saw Joe and Brock alike punishing defenses for not respecting their arms enough. Young concluded his assessment about Brock Purdy with the following statement. "You talk about the top of the culture, the innovative offense, the play calling, and the talent. It all kind of comes together. It's easy to say last pick in the draft, and at his size, arm strength, and everything else, there's limitations. When talking about Brock Purdy, I don't think you should speak that way because I think he's the kind of guy who's going to make you look like a dummy." Going into this training camp, while Brock Purdy may not be ready to start right away, I do think that the story this upcoming season will be much the same as last season. People counting out Brock Purdy, saying he's not going to be able to be successful this upcoming year. And then Brock Purdy, as he did last year, will turn it on and look, I argue, similar to how he looked last year. Purdy was facing NFL defenses for several games, and this meant that each defense kept getting more and more tape on him. And these defenses weren't doing simplistic things, but rather throwing the entire book at Purdy to see what he could handle. And Purdy handled it all with ease. Going into this season, while there's more tape on Purdy, there's also more tape for Purdy to diagnose what other teams were trying to do to him. And this is something that's much overlooked in Purdy's game. Purdy has one of the highest S2 cognition scores across the entire league, and even the founder of the S2 test said Purdy will never have a problem understanding what NFL defenses are trying to do to him. And ultimately, this is a big reason why Brock Purdy has the force that Steve Young mentions. These are just my thoughts on Brock Purdy and the Niners quarterback situation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.